I'm Thomas, and you are listening to the Gracing Podcast. Today, I'm joined once again by Andrew Vontz. Thank you so much for finding the time. If you didn't listen to our first episode, Andrew is really a busy man. He is probably known as the co-host of the Beyond the Peloton podcast. He's also known as the host of the Choose the Hard Way podcast. And of course, he's the founder of Better Labs, where he makes you and me and everybody who wants sleep better. If at least you're in the USA, or did anything change about your availability, US only?
Still just US only. You can find us in the Apple App Store for free if you want to build a healthy sleep routine so you can feel great for your training. Check it out. It works.
But the reason why I invited you, Andrew, is you are a man with an ear to the ground. You follow gravel like I would say a few others, and also you're like a media PR expert yourself, and I think we have stuff to talk about.
Oh, I think we do too. Yeah, we've got a big season coming up, Thomas.
So there are two things that we talked about putting this podcast together, I said, let's talk about off-season gossip and 2025 predictions. And well, as I said, you are a busy man. We have a hard cut in less than 1 hour. So Andrew, I'm asking you, what are you picking up? What is the word on the streets?
Oh, man, there's so much to talk about. I think at least one of the biggest trends here in the United States is I think what's happening at SBT is going to happen at a lot more events. So I think that events are going to have to start shifting their formats to be more accommodating to the communities where they're based. And I think at the professional level, what that means is we're going to see a move towards more of the European style racing. Maybe not, I mean, the Lifetime Grand Prix events are going to stay the same, right? Although there is, in balance, more mountain biking in the Lifetime Grand Prix this year. But I think gravel is going to start to move in the direction of more circuit style racing. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in 2025 at the pro level in the United States, but it just kind of seems inevitable to me. What's happening at SBT is going to start happening.
And what's your take? Is that a good or a bad development?
I think it's what's happening. So we've just got to roll with it. I think if we look at the UCI style circuit based gravel racing, it seems pretty exciting to me. I enjoy watching it. They definitely could, going back to our previous conversation, I would like to see something that doesn't result in what we saw at Gravel Worlds this year. I think we both agree that having within the first 300 meters a choke point so that you go down to single file and people like on a canal path flying into a canal, like that's, I don't know. I don't think that that's cool. But, you look at that race overall, like, wow, just visually spectacular. The action at the front of the race, even though Belgium had 48 riders in the event, it was still a hell of a race, right? I enjoyed watching it. What do you think?
Look, I mean, for me, it's a bit like having circuit races and at least having like probably a starting point E, a different endpoint B, but then doing a couple of or 3 loops at the endpoint is never a bad thing for racing, and especially for the spectators. I mean, if you think about it as a spectator sport, and then as we are moving hopefully into an era where we will have more broadcasting of gravel events, and if we are in remote locations, then if it's a location where you do 3 loops, it's probably easier to set up a working infrastructure for live broadcasts or even just for good recordings of the event. So, and for the racers, I mean, what I hear is the guys in the US are stoked about what SBT is doing. Over here in Europe, we know nothing else. Rather, here the issue is people, you cannot follow most of the UCI races unless it's the World Championship. So nothing there is properly broadcast. But no, I think it's new, and of course we like the not ultra distance, but the 200, 300 kilometer plus type of traditional gravel races from point A to point B. They are fun. I think they will always exist. And some races will be like this in, as you mentioned, communities that are supportive and so on. But I guess it's a good format, and a format that if promoters go to it can very well prove popular.
Yeah, definitely. And Thomas, I think the point that you make about what a compelling streaming, or I guess TV would be the antiquated way to put it, but just the visual video-based product that these events put out, I think circuit races are really fantastic. They're really easy to follow. It's easier to put together production. And even if you think about, we've talked about this a lot on Beyond the Peloton, actually. If you think about some of the most exciting one-day races of the past few years, I have to say, for me, Glasgow Worlds is in my top 3. Just that event was incredible. Granted, they had, I think, maybe 130, 140 miles before they got onto the finishing circuit. I might be wrong. But anyway, they did something to kind of wear everyone out. Then they put them in that incredibly challenging, punchy city center circuit. And just between the turns and the steep pitches, it was an incredible race. And it was one of the most fun, dynamic, exciting races I think I've watched in my entire lifetime. I mean, how many times do you see Pog get nuked? I mean, barely ever, right? It was, what a race.
Barely ever. I mean, very different than this year's, or last year's, we should say, championship race. So no 100K attack in this one.
Yeah, definitely not. So yeah, I think overall it could be awesome. Another trend, I don't even know if this is a trend. This has kind of been an inevitability. And again, you and I have discussed this a bit. I was actually thinking this morning about Big Sugar. Great race. I would love to do it this year. I think maybe it looks so hard, but if you think about the finish of that race, Alexei Vermeulen, former World Tour rider, was on Jumbo-Visma, or whatever they were called prior to being called Jumbo-Visma, earlier in his career, then left the World Tour, came back to the US, went into gravel. And then we have the younger Simmons brother just drops in from the World Tour to do Big Sugar as a training race, almost beats Alexei. And we got another really fantastic race, like 2-up racing at the finish. I think it also indicated, frankly, the disparity between World Tour level racing and what we're seeing in gravel. And I think, if a relatively low level World Tour rider can just drop in as a training ride and almost win one of the most highly contested gravel events in the world.
I think, what we don't know how seriously Kobe took the race. I mean, probably wasn't a peaking A race style for it, but I think racing in the US in a very well-known gravel race, I think he was motivated, and probably
definitely
it was at least like a B thing on his schedule. So
nonetheless, I think that we argue. Yeah, the disparity is huge. I mean, the disparity is huge. Yeah, and I do think we're going to start seeing more World Tour riders popping over. It's actually, I was thinking about Mathieu van der Poel's comments recently. I don't know if he made these from one of his Lamborghinis, but he said basically, you know what? Like, I don't really know if I need to go back to the Tour de France. Like, what's left for me to do there? I'm sure Jasper Philipsen didn't like hearing that, because if Van der Poel's there, I'm not sure how many stages Philipsen is going to win. Van der Poel is, I think, indisputably the world's best lead out man. I do wonder, though, right now, Van der Poel is saying, hey, like, my focus is going to be mountain biking, or that's a potential scenario that he focuses on winning the mountain bike world championship. I could imagine a rider of his caliber who just has an appetite for winning the biggest events in the world. I could see him saying, maybe in 2026, you know what, I'm going to go win Unbound. And I don't think...
Or 2028, maybe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right. But I think if he decides to do that, we're going to see more and more crossover from actual World Tour riders at their peak. Or can you imagine if Pog said, hey, I'm going to show up? It's not going to be... it could be pretty incredible.
A point Dylan Johnson is making fairly, I guess, is especially Unbound. It's tricky. It's tricky from an equipment side. It's how long, and we saw the gravel world champion, former gravel world champion Matej Mohoric appearing, and then just having so many flats and technical issues that he was gone. So there is a side to this race. You need to be well prepared, and it needs to be like if MVDP comes and he sets this as a main goal for his season, then like power-wise, performance-wise, he will beat everybody there. That is clear. But then he needs to really take it seriously. And if he just goes there like I do a training ride, it's not guaranteed that he's going to win it, even though, yeah, of course, he's likely. And there is a disparity. But on the other side, we see the level rising. And I remember in the Australian World Championships when Keegan, he just went there, not like for a training ride, but I think it was not a long planned season highlight. And I think recently, I think it was Spencer somewhere talking about like he finished in the time limit. I kind of remember, I need to fact check this in a minute. He finished like in 26th place or so, like in the in a not too bad position. So these guys can certainly cycle, but yeah, they are not the best of the best caliber that is in the World Tour.
Another trend that I'm seeing, and I'm curious what you're seeing over in Europe, here in the States, a lot of riders are following the training programs that they're seeing from athletes like Dylan Johnson, who you just mentioned, or I don't know if you're following Chase Work this week on Instagram, but he just did 1,000 miles on his trainer.
And he made you train a lot indoor as well.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I'm doing an Everest in a week right now. If anybody wants to do that, shoot me a DM. You can hit me at Hardway Pod on Instagram, and I'd love for you to do it as well. We've got a small group going after it. But yeah, Chase Work doing 1,000 miles on his trainer in the basement in Minnesota in the winter. So we see riders putting in these 25, 30, sometimes 40-hour training blocks. And, if you go look at World Tour riders' training files, some of them maybe occasionally are doing a block that big, but we're just seeing a lot of these American gravel pros doing volume and intensity at a level that it doesn't feel very sustainable. And in fact, what it reminds me of is, for anybody out there who's old enough and has followed these sports for, 35 or 40 years, this strategy of just adding more and more and more volume, really popular in the 80s with professional triathletes. And a lot of them, sadly, actually are having pretty severe health issues now later in life as a consequence of going that deep. And a lot of them also washed out of the sport kind of before their expiration date just because they pushed their bodies too far. And I'm mentioning this because we have these athletes trying to maximize their potential, like Chase, Dylan, who I think they would say to you, hey, I'm not an actual World Tour level talent. I'm just trying to maximize what I have.
Yeah,
and then what I see on the amateur side, and I talked to a lot of users of the Better Lab who are really interested in getting great sleep and recovery. And there are people who are trying to get the most out of their bodies for their gravel events, actually. So I've ended up talking to a lot of people, learning a lot about how they're training for these events. And, these are people who are in their 40s, 50s, extremely busy, a lot of them executives, busy family lives, and they're cramming in like 20 or 30 hours of training a week. I'm like, how are you doing this? Number one. Number two, a lot of them actually end up sacrificing sleep, which is a huge mistake. It's like undercutting your performance in the worst way possible. And I'm just wondering, like, what happens in the next 12 to 18 months if we start seeing some of these athletes at the top level of the sport who you're seeing make YouTube videos and posting on Instagram about these 30, 40-hour training weeks, if they're going to start having chronic fatigue and like wash out of the sport. Actually, it's a concern I have.
I mean, I guess it's a valid concern. Then I think it's also really about programming and what you do right after it. I mean, I don't know if you watched, I guess, the latest Dylan Johnson video where he goes in depth in like his training prep for Unbound last year. And
yeah, I watched it. Yeah, I did. I don't do the Festive 500. I do the Abandon Your Family 500, which you do the week before the Festive 500 when it's actually hard to do if you're someone who cares about your job and family. But yeah, I watched Dylan's video and that just struck me as,
I mean, the approach he took last year, he was very sick briefly after this, and maybe that was a blessing in disguise because he recovered more. And I think that is like, so first thing that I have to say, you make the good point. World Tour pros usually don't have that big blocks, and they are also doing very different races, especially from like the US gravel pros, because they have these crazy long races in the between 8 and 10 hours sometimes, and that is a very specific challenge for your body, and you need to build specific fitness for this. And that is why I think, as a block from time to time in your training, I mean, look, I'm not a coach and I don't claim to be, but I definitely think it can make sense as a training method to sprinkle it in and then follow it with plenty of recovery. And if you do it like this, probably it's sustainable. If you do like start doing 40-hour weeks now and you want to do this until May or September for that matter, then of course you will be effed. That's for sure. But also I think the interesting point is, if you look to riders who focus on the UCI circuit or the Gravel Earth series, then they will have probably very different training regimes. And that is if I'm talking to someone like Paul Voss, probably the top German gravel professional on the men's side. He is probably, or I know because he's on the record, it's a bit challenging nowadays for a pro who wants to be successful in US races, but also European races, to structure the training appropriately to succeed in all these, because they are so different formats. Because a 4-5 hour race that is fairly intense obviously demands very different training.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you're an amateur, I think going back to the conversation we were having about how does the format potentially shift, I think, yeah, these long races are going to continue to be appealing. And I think they will be bucket list goals for a lot of people. Like, hey, I'm going to do Unbound 200. I also think maybe we're reaching the point where a lot of people who have a high degree of interest in this have kind of checked those boxes, and they might have realized, oh, wow, I'm divorced now, or my kids won't talk to me because I'm training 30 or 40 hours a week. I mean, actually, Thomas, I thought about you when I watched that Dylan Johnson video, because like me, you're a busy dad, you're a career-oriented person, you're out there hustling, you're trying to get stuff done. And when I watched Dylan's video, I know a lot of people, if not most of the people who are consuming his content, I'm guessing are probably in their 40s, 50s, or early 60s, because that's most of the people who race gravel. And Dylan's program might work for Dylan, but again, when you get older, you have to train and recover a bit differently. Actually, I shot Dylan a note after I watched that video, and I said, hey, I think that you have this huge opportunity if you made a video like this, but maybe explain how someone who's later in life, who can't recover as fast and doesn't have as much time, might actually approach this. And then I realized, hey, maybe that's my opportunity. Maybe I should be the guy making that content. So I don't think, Dylan, whatever, like that's not his bag. He's telling you like, hey, this is how I got it done.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, don't train like the pros do, train the way you need it. That's for sure. So
yeah,
I have a confession to make, Andrew. Not only do I really,
what am I about to hear?
Not only do I really miss gravel, but I also find the gravel has an off-season problem. So I don't know, you're based in the US, probably you follow other US sports. Me, I'm a big NBA fan. And one of the most exciting period for NBA fans is the off-season, because you have trade rumors going on and you have all these gossip podcasts, and it is really an exciting time for a fan. And even if you look at road cycling, this off-season was fantastic, right? With the entire Tom Pidcock saga. In gravel, so there are a few moves that were notable. Hannah Otto, she moved to Scott. Paul Voss, he moved to Rose. And these were pretty nicely told stories if you follow the right channels on Instagram. But by and large, there is not a lot of off-season gossip and talk. And there are few teams, and teams are just beginning to become a thing. And that, of course, is when you can talk about trades and so on. But here, I think there is a structural issue, probably a media attention issue. What does gravel need to do? And you're the right man to ask this as a PR professional, media expert. What can gravel do to be more exciting during the off season?
Yeah, what can gravel do to be more exciting during the off season? I've been thinking about this a lot as I've watched cyclocross races this year, and I used to love racing cyclocross. I used to really love watching it as well. I know some people don't like watching cyclocross. I have a few friends that, I bring up cyclocross and like they leave the room or like they'll exit the chat. They still want to hear about it. I have to say, for me, this is the first year that seeing Matthew Vanderpool come out in time trial in zone 2 and beat everyone by several minutes, it is starting to seem kind of boring to me. It's off-putting. I don't like it as much.
But you watch it nevertheless.
You know what? I've watched it a lot less though, and it has made me think about, I know that this is apostasy, but when I see cyclocross, I just think, what if they didn't have to run? What if you were on a gravel bike, you were on a closed circuit, and you never had to get off your bike? And I'm kind of suggesting a completely new format for the sport. And I think it actually would work. So if you
gravel
had
cross. Gravel cross.
Yeah. So imagine having something kind of like BMX where you have small heats of riders, you're on a closed course. It's not a purpose-built course like a BMX course. It's maybe more like XC Eliminator. And I don't know if you've watched that discipline much.
No.
Okay, so that's like an offshoot of cross-country mountain biking that they have in city centers, and it's like 2 minutes long, and it's a 4-up race, and they start them from gates like BMX riders.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's popular in Europe. They don't even have it in the United States. They do have a world championship for it. Anyhow, I think there's this opportunity because we now have all these people with gravel bikes. To your point, like what's going on in the winter, maybe have a shorter format race on a really closed circuit that's more like a cyclocross race. Don't force the riders to get off and run and carry their bikes. I think to the average person, they're like, why are these people carrying these bikes? That doesn't make any sense. And then I think you have a pretty compelling product, and you stick that in the middle of a 30 or 40 hour training week, you're getting your intensity, you're getting more media coverage. I also think, Thomas, the point you made about there's just like not a lot of action. And part of that is because we just have all of these individuals with their own programs scrambling to just piece something together so that they can get to the races next year. Most of the coverage or the action on Instagram, especially this week, has just been posts where a writer says, hey, I want to thank Gooder Sunglasses for 3 great years. And like, I'm going to have an announcement sooner. I saw Keegan made an announcement that he's not going to use a Garmin computer anymore. I'm not sure I particularly care about that. And then there's some speculation that all SRAM riders are going to be forced onto Hammerhead head units because SRAM now owns Hammerhead. So like, there's a little bit of that. I do think a trend that has to be coming, and we're going to see more of this year, is not just riders like Adam Roberge and Dylan Johnson being on a quote unquote team where they're both riding felt bikes. I think we have to start seeing some actual real team tactics, not just like Tobin Ortenblad's getting paid to
lead out.
To like win for Keegan. I think if you want to win in the future, you're going to have to put together an actual team of people, and you're going to have to function like a road racing team. I think that's cool. Personally, I think it's going to, you've participated in these events. It's dicey out there when you get on gravel. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens when you add a team dynamic to that. It'll be cool.
The last show we did was one where we did season awards of 2024 season awards, and we had Amanda Naumann on there as well. Mm-hmm. And we touched a bit about team tactics. And I mean, one thing that is different in gravel is that these races are so hard. So the typical, you have the 7 people team that is pacing the peloton doesn't work, because these guys need to be as strong as the guys who are at the front of the race and as adept as riders. So I guess team tactics will come to gravel, but they will probably work differently and specific to gravel and not be just a copy of road racing. But they will come, and we see like currently with the teams, it's like you have some of the teams that are like the Par Racing, or over here we have the Rose Racing Circle, for instance, as teams. These are proper teams. They pay salaries to the riders. I think it's how Par Racing also operates. And these are proper teams, but then you have all these loser team structures where basically people are kind of privateers, or at least bring a bunch of their own sponsors still. So it's really probably a transition period currently. But yeah, I think we are at a point where it's a critical advantage to have people around you who are supporting you, at least if the rules allow it. Then there are still some races where they say certain types of support are not even allowed.
Yeah, completely. I'm trying to look up this writer's name right now. I think his name's Ilya Kesik. Whatever. So what this is making me think of is, again, like there are analogies of this in other disciplines of cycling that have emerged in the last 20 or 30 years. So for example, if you look at fixed gear crits, and in particular, if you look at the Red Hook crit, I don't know if you recall this. I was at the Red Hook crit in, I think, 2016. And I believe that year Specialized had an actual team. And it was this rider, I want to say his name was Ilya Kesik. I might be getting that name wrong, but it was him and it was Colin.
Let's go with it.
Yeah, it was him and Colin Strickland. And prior to that point, no one had really ridden as a team in these races. It was kind of similar to gravel, every person for themselves. They showed up, they rode like a team. They got in a 2-man breakaway, got a huge separation from the field, and won the race. And I think Amanda's point is a good one. I would say, though, that yes, you don't, most of these riders, you don't have comparable ability levels on these teams. So for example, with Keegan and Tobin's a strong rider, and probably his strongest discipline is cyclocross, which I don't believe he's actually racing anymore. You just can't really make a living doing that in the United States. And, if you look at what the role that Tobin plays on that team, for example, at Leadville, Tobin's role is to eat wind in the first hour of the race. He's just dragging the entire field, and then he blows up. But, imagine if you had 5 Tobins on the team and their efforts distributed across the entire. Leadville's not a great example because Keegan is like an absolute freak at high altitude.
The fifth one still needs to be there 5 hours in, and that is the challenge.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, think about Pog's teammates. None of them are anywhere near the physical ability of Pog, yet through the distribution of effort, you still have somebody there until whenever he's going to do his attack. Same thing with Jonas, who, by the way, I think Jonas is going to win the Tour this year. Not a popular opinion, but I'm going to put it out there. So anyhow, I do think as gravel racing hopefully gets bigger, hopefully we see more money coming into the sport. And here in the United States, we've just seen a complete contraction of all other forms of competitive cycling. And, Thomas, we haven't talked about this. There were some German crit riders who came over and were absolutely crushing the United States crit scene this year. The US,
the guys from Allgäu.
Yeah. So the US crit scene used to be able to, you could make a decent living. If you were a good crit rider, you could go just from preems and prize money, you could make $100K. Not everybody was doing that, but that was a way to make a living as a pro cyclist. That doesn't exist anymore. So US riders, their route is either you move to Europe when you're 14, you live in Belgium and you try to get to the world tour, or you go into gravel. Those are kind of your options. So I actually think we're going to see a higher and higher level of talent, at least domestically here in the States, coming into the sport. So I could imagine a scenario in a couple of years where you do have 5 people on Keegan's team. They're there to support Keegan, or same thing with Sophia.
One German is, by the way, coming over to take over the crit and the gravel scene, both at once. Former World Tour rider, Ballerstedt. I don't know if you're aware.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think that's a great example. So I just think, again, I don't know the situation in Germany. For me, just following it on social media and YouTube, it looks like fixed gear racing still seems to be pretty big. There seem to be some kind of domestic criterium scene, and gravel seems to be on the rise as well.
I mean, the Germans, I think the guy's name is Augstein. I'm not 100% certain. He won one of the 3 days during the biggest
Tulsa Tough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, I think, considering going to the US, or he talked about also the financial side and how much money you can make with this in the US compared to here,
Right.
where they are all basically amateur racers and they have day jobs.
Yeah.
Besides going really hard. So yeah, it's I mean, I guess the crit racing is economically really good in the US compared to over here. And
yeah. But it's changed. It used to be way, way better. So I think a lot of riders now, the option is just like try to patch together some suite of sponsors to race gravel, or you have the genetics and you have the drive to go to the world tour. And there's not a lot in the middle anymore, unfortunately. Yeah.
So sticking a bit to gravel, but it somehow relates. I have a 2025 prediction here on my list, that is that the Gravel Earth Series will have a significantly higher mind share in the US.
Okay. Say more.
But I would be curious, like, what is your take and how do you, as an American, look at Gravel Earth Series? Did you follow it a tiny bit? Do you know who won it this year?
Yeah, you know what? Off the top of my head, no, I don't know who won it. Did I follow it? The way I've followed it is some of the athletes have made really compelling content about it. So that's kind of how I found out about these different races. It's definitely been fun to see the content. And I think some subset of amateurs in the United States probably aspire, it's like, whatever, I'm going to go do that, or Traca, or I'm going to do the Atlas Mountain Race. People kind of start branching out in these different directions. So I think it's cool to have something like that. Equally, we know how hard it is just for people to get around and do some events in the US. So to like expand that to the entire world, man, that's tough to swing from a financial point of view.
Oh, it is. But I think so. I don't know all the inner workings. And actually, one of the next episodes on my schedule here is to do a preview with someone who is really deep in the Gravel Earth series and knows it super well. But I don't know if you followed the thing that they added a bunch of races in the US.
Okay.
That now are part of Gravel Earth series. So, for instance, the Lauf Gravel Worlds, formerly Garmin Gravel Worlds, are among them. Then the Private Idaho thing, Rebecca's Private Idaho, joined as well.
Okay.
In Utah, we have the, what is it called? Last Grizzly or something.
Okay, if you say so. All right, I'm on the site now. Wow, yeah, they've added a lot of races.
They have a lot of US races now, and probably you heard that Stettiner didn't apply for the Lifetime Grand Prix this year, and his announcement sounded a bit like he's rather focusing on Gravel Earth series and maybe also doing one or two UCI things. And some of the people in the US who didn't make it into Lifetime Grand Prix are also going to do it. So I believe and it works differently than Lifetime Grand Prix. That's also, I guess, important to mention, because it is like, if you don't have to do all the races, or can only drop one or two. I think you need points from 3 or 4 races. So essentially, if you are a US racer, you can do only the US races, and if you do well, you have enough points to be in the ranking. And I think you need to do the last race, the final. This you need to do, and that is a Spanish race, right? It's the Ranxo gravel. So, but that means, as a US gravel racer, if you're not in the Lifetime Grand Prix, you can try to get the wild card there, or you do all the Gravel Earth Series events and do one Spanish race as the season highlight. And of course, the payout is not as big as it is in Lifetime, but still there is a overall, and you can win prize money for the overall. And some of the very good US races are now part of it. And it's not like they own it. I think that is the difference between how Lifetime operates it. It's more they partner with the promoters and they become a part of the series. So it's an interesting development, and definitely that is my impression. They want to become the second big relevant player.
Okay. All right. So I just started doing a little bit of digging into the business side of this. Do you know the people? Do you know
Classmark?
Yeah. Do you know the people who own the event? Like, have you spoken to them before?
I talked to their PR and media person once, but I don't know them super well. But they are a legit promoter of different events.
Definitely. So it looks like they've been around since 2010. So just looking at what they did in the last year, and then also just thinking about the business side of this, my guess would be, I mean, if you own events and the events are so highly desirable to people that you more or less have an installed, it kind of becomes like software as a service, because if your event's desirable enough, it sells out every year. You have a guaranteed revenue stream, more or less. And what we've seen a lot of these events do that get to that level, such as Leadville, Unbound, their aspiration actually is to flip their business and to sell it to a bigger fish, whether that's Ironman, Lifetime. We've seen this happen a number of times. So I think the consolidation that we've seen with Classmark rolling up all of these events, I mean, once you put them into this global package, they're part of a series, I think they become even more desirable. And this was a bit of the strategy I believe that Lifetime had with events like the Rad, Crusher, and the Tusher. It was elevating these events so that they rose to this kind of legendary status and then would sell out every year. It didn't necessarily work with all of them. And then you have this highly profitable business that you can sell for a multiple to a bigger fish. So I have to think that that's potentially what's happening on the business side with the Gravel Earth Series. And I think the benefit to athletes, I wasn't aware of this until you just pointed it out, but like, wow, this looks like a super cool series. And then it's bringing some coherence to otherwise, which is kind of this patchwork of events. I do wonder, like for you, Thomas, when you look at events that are out there, like what are the ones that still capture your imagination? I would just share, for me, one that I haven't done that I'm interested in doing, primarily because I have family from this state, but I want to go do Garmin, or it's not Garmin now, it's Lauf Gravel Worlds in Lincoln, Nebraska, because I have family that live about 50 miles from there, and I just think it kind of would be fun to race in that area.
Yeah.
But like, what's on your list? Like, what's capturing your imagination this year?
I mean, so my imagination is captured by stuff that I won't be doing this year, just for family reasons. With two little kids, it's like, so for instance, Badlands is very high on my personal list. I don't know if you know it. It's one of these ultra distance, 800 kilometers in Spain through the Spanish desert. That is a race that I would, it's officially not even a race, but that is on my list. And then when it comes to the more one-day stuff, of course, I'd be stoked to go to the US and even do Unbound, even though that's probably not the most sexy one. But the Red, for instance, is cool. Here in Europe, definitely the Tracker would be pretty cool to do. And then smaller ones. I mean, actually, what I'm eyeing to do are 2 UCI gravel races, and one of them is in Belgium. I didn't book the tickets yet or paid the starting fee yet, but I think one is in Belgium and the other one I can't even recall. Maybe both are in Belgium even.
Right. That sounds cool. Nice. Yeah. I mean, I also have a few in Europe. Some of the ones you mentioned, for me, I don't think I could responsibly train for from a time point of view, but nonetheless, I kind of think of myself as a sprint distance gravel specialist. I will say though, I have a few things this year that I'm going to give a shot that are longer than what I've done in the past several years. So I'm like borderline considering doing a 205 mile event in Michigan because
Okay.
I have a friend who's doing it. And I'm like, man, how could I train for that and be the dad I need to be, that I want to be? I don't know. Maybe my kids would be like, wow, my dad's incredible. Like, wow, he did that 205-mile race. That's why I never saw him for 6 months.
But I guess if you so I never did that long of a race, or
I haven't either. I've never done an event that long. My longest event was 140 miles.
So I think training for this doesn't necessarily involve doing like 200-mile rides for consecutive weeks all the time. I think your training approach can be different. Actually, there was some good talk by the good folks on the Chris Miller show. I don't know if you know these guys. They talked about the difference between preparation and training. And
I saw that episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is like, I guess, a very good point they are making. But yeah, so back to the Gravel Earth series, I think they are doing a pretty good job. And it seems to me, as an observer from the outside, like they made a concerted effort to have a lot of US races to be more relevant there, because obviously the US still is the mecca of gravel cycling. And that is pretty interesting to me. I also have a Lifetime Grand Prix related kind of prediction.
Okay.
I believe the wildcard system, it's going to be really, really exciting for the fans. But I kind of feel like riders are hating it, because at least so far what I hear is that it's pretty complex and not really clear how it's going to work. Like, for instance, if somebody who gets a wild card and he had a good result at Unbound, but he was not in the like say he finished ninth overall, and that is seventh of the Lifetime Grand Prix people. Is that then going to be, once he is introduced, will he get the points from the 7th place, or will the person who finished 7th among the Lifetime riders keep these points? And these are all these detailed questions where I picked up on some podcasts or videos, I don't even recall, that people are uncertain how it's going to work. I don't know if there has been clarification by Lifetime in the meantime, but if not, I guess that is the riders will not be super stoked.
Yeah, when I read about the wildcard system, part of me thought, okay, this is cool. This gives some Rocky type character the chance to rise up and get in the mix once the series is underway. Equally, man, that also means that whoever that person is who's going to step up and get an opportunity, they've really lost the opportunity to have some leverage to get the sponsorship they need to actually go out and do this for a living, right? So I think that's kind of a bummer. And the way the system works, it just seems pretty confusing. So it's got this like Dungeons and Dragons aspect to it where it's just overly complicated. There are a lot of rules. So it might be kind of hard to follow, is kind of the feeling that I have. So we'll see what happens, but it's a little confusing to me on the face of things.
Yeah, definitely. But I think still it will be pretty cool for people who follow this from the outside, because there will be, if they do the storytelling well, and I assume that is why they introduced it. So I give them the benefit of the doubt that they have some good ideas how to do how to tell the story around this. But that is
definitely.
So interesting, I guess, but the wildcard execution so far seems confusing. And
I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, and riders don't, participants don't, and that is something of a hassle. Well, do you have a prediction on your list that we need to touch upon? You need to run in 12 minutes.
Yeah, actually, I've got a couple of predictions. And another thing I wanted to say about Gravel Earth Series, because I've got the page in front of me. I'm looking at this. Man, I see a bunch of races I would love to do. Yeah. So Gravel Earth, if you're listening, you want some high influence creator, thinker, founder people out there, you need to get Thomas and I out to these events. Just fly us in. We'd be happy to do the Rift in Iceland. We'll show up. I'll put you on my Instagram. I'll make you famous. I know you've got Valtteri Bottas, but let's go to another level. You can come on over to the Hardway Pod Instagram account. I'll have you on the show. Core 4 in Iowa is a super interesting race to me. I would love to go do that race. Another prediction that I have generally, there's the racing side of this. I think what makes all of this interesting and compelling, it's the personalities, it's the athletes themselves. And when I think about where is there untapped opportunity, the two athletes that really come to mind for me are Drew Dillman and Chase Work, because I think they're quite funny. I really like their content. They're not in the Lifetime Grand Prix this year, but if I were someone making sponsorship decisions or thinking about who I was going to put on the start line at my race, I'd make sure I'd had both of those athletes, because I think they make really, really fantastic content.
True.
And it's almost like watching professional wrestlers, what those two guys have done in the past year. And Chase, they both get out there and they really animate races, and they go for it even when they might not have a shot. They're doing the very most that they can with their talent. I think they're really relatable to amateur athletes. And just on the creator side, I think they're really talented creators making fun content. And as much as anything else, that's part of what's so fun about gravel, right?
That was like a bit of the running joke back in the days, almost like, gravel, that is all these gravel pros are these influencers who also race a bit. And now the last 2-3 years, the talk has been about how the performance and level is getting higher and higher, and everybody is training like crazy. And indeed, the performances are great. But what is cool for gravel compared to many other sports, it came to be in the social media age. And so the game is really a social media game, how it works. People follow these riders, and yes, we want probably better packaging and make it easier digestible, easier to find, all that stuff. But these people, we know even in the big sports like in football, aka soccer, we saw this trend that fandom moved from teams to individuals to players, all powered by social media. And that is certainly something where gravel already is from day one. And it doesn't mean because you have a good social game that you have to be a bad athlete. And if you bring both to the table, that is brilliant. And that is where sponsors definitely should look. I guess they are also looking there, but it's in the award show I mentioned before. We did, of course, like an MVP, most valuable rider category, and I had the boring selection because on my list Keegan was the top selection. But actually, Paul and Amanda, like the active and former top racers, they thought much more about it from a sponsorship angle. And Paul nominated Dylan Johnson because, obviously a very, very smart choice if you are a brand wanting to do something in gravel, but also want to create a lot of attention. And Amanda Griffin Easter, because like also his media game and the team he's doing and so on. But certainly there is, while it's a running gag, influencers doing gravel pros, it's very good, and smart brands should leverage that.
Yeah, and I think part of me, even as I'm hearing myself say what I just said, I'm like, like really, you would say that? But yes, I would. And part of why I'm saying I have to have the content or creator side of it, and the a really interesting and compelling kind of provocative narrative, which I do think Drew and Chase bring it into the mix. I'm actually thinking about, why do I not care about cyclocrosses anymore? It's because I feel like I'm watching robots go out and ride around. Matthew Vanderpool shows up in a Lamborghini, like Drago and Rocky. Then he gives,
but at least he's kind of a character.
He is a character, but just you don't have any access to these people. And granted, I'm probably not the target market of Ellie Iserbit, I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't think I follow him on Instagram. Maybe he's making amazing content. I get the feeling he's probably not, and he's like a really dead serious and focused athlete, which is great. First and foremost, it is important if you're a professional athlete to be as good as possible at what you do. And I'm actually I'd love to learn more about that guy. I wish he had a YouTube channel. I wish I could learn more about him on Instagram. I think that about all of these athletes. Like Toon Aerts, what's he up to? I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, we see more and more pros even on the road side starting their own channels. Some do it pretty well. I think Remco is doing it okay. Arno Deli is quite good. But it's an interesting development in cycling and in all sports for that matter. And it's somehow ingrained in the gravel culture because like all the established sports, they have this culture problem where they train athletes from a teenager age on the media side, and then they are so clean that they are not relatable. And also in gravel as a participatory sport, it's so useful to have these people who are at the front end of these races, but still come from the internet, so to speak, because that makes it relatable. And because so many people do these races, unlike in road racing, where it's just the World Tour pros doing it, here so many people line up at the same event, and then that makes it even more attractive to have the content about how do they train, how do they pick their equipment, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so let's cut to the chase here. Let's get to what people really want to hear about. If you could be on any gravel bike right now, what bike would you like to be on?
I would buy my stuff from Panda Podium and AliExpress, and I would assemble my own custom thing. I saw a frame. Really? I didn't remember the name. Yeah, I would.
All right.
I would do this now because there are really cool bikes on the higher end of the spectrum, but there is always something. Maybe I would get the Lauf one. I think it's called Ziegler. Lauf Ziegler, that is of the ready builds one, but I think the best money spent is if you go custom build and buying good Chinese product.
All right, you're gonna have to send me a link because I think in the gravel category, it's really unclear. I go dig around on Reddit and all the other places like you probably have. I don't know what the cool Chinese carbon gravel bikes are. I would love to hear.
I don't know the level of the British championships, national gravel championships, but they were apparently won by the frame.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, you're going to have to send me a link. Like for me, if I were going and buying something off the shelf, it would be a Lauf Ziegler. That's the bike I would like. I've seen a lot of them at races. They kind of, for me, they tick all the boxes. They have external cables, which I just don't think on a gravel bike you need internally routed cables. If I'm going to an event, I'm usually getting on an airplane and I don't want to mess around with internal cables. They have a threaded bottom bracket and it can accommodate larger than 2-inch wheels. The only thing the Lauf doesn't have that I personally like, I do like to run a 2x and I like to use my gravel bike as a road bike. There's probably some way to do that. Well, you can't put a 2x on that bike, but that's kind of the only thing I don't like. I
think it's the price you pay for the tire clearance, no? Because this really clears mountain bike tires.
Probably. It also has a normal 27.2 round seat post. I'm just a fan of standard stuff that you can replace. The gravel bike I race right now, it's actually my cross bike that I used to race like a decade ago. It's a 2015 Giant TCX, and it's quite light. It's probably like 18 pounds, but the bottom bracket is super high. So especially on really steep terrain, I just feel
not good.
It's not good, but it can take some big tires and I can run a 2x on it, but I'm ready to get modern. So maybe Lauf needs to send us some bikes and get us over to the Rift to ride with Valtteri Bottas. That's what I'm thinking.
Idea. I'm digging it. Well, if you would have more time, but you have to run, we could still talk about who is going to lose out between the big three series, which I believe, just to give it to the listeners, is going to be the UCI, unless they level up their production of their series at least. Not talking about the World Championship race itself, but the rest of the series. I feel like Lifetime set the benchmark. Gravel Earth Series, they are really also thinking about how to publicize their series, how to produce the media for all of it. And I feel the UCI doesn't have the strongest game.
I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, you've convinced me. Like now I'm like, I've got to get out to some of these Gravel Earth events. They look awesome.
They have live streams of some of their best races on YouTube.
Awesome. Free. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Great.
So on that note, Andrew, you need to run. Thanks a lot for your time. It was fun as always, and I hope to have you back as a as the season starts finally in a few weeks.
Yeah, I hope to be back. Thanks so much for having me on. If you're in the US, please check out the Better Lab in the Apple App Store. And my podcast, Choose the Hard Way, is going to be starting a new season here shortly. I've got a new title sponsor, blockchain.com. If you're a crypto person, check them out for all your crypto needs. And I'm really excited. I'm going to have some awesome guests that if you listen to this podcast, you're going to want to hear them. I'm actually today going to reach out to Chase Work because I've got to get him on to talk about that 1,000 miles he's spending in his basement. I can't wait to hear about it.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
Take care. Cheers. That was my conversation with Andrew Vontz. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. And if you did, there is something new you may or may not have heard before. Namely, you can now support Outside and the content we are doing on Patreon. For a couple of bucks a month, you can help us really out to finance the work that we are doing, help us to get even more content out there and to cover even more of the global and European gravel scene. And you can also join the Outside community. So we started a Discord server where we would love to see many of you to talk about gravel racing, and everything that is interesting to us in the cycling and off-road cycling community. And we have some cool ideas for the future. So again, if you want to help out, join us on Patreon. The link is to be found in the show notes. Have a good one. Cheers.